believe we are now streaming live on LinkedIn and also YouTube, apparently. Although I will have to take Restream's word for it because I can't see that. But hopefully, there are some people hearing us live now. Thank you so much for joining, if you are joining. By the way, we will keep our eye on the chat the whole way through. So if anyone's got any questions as they're listening into this stream, please feel free to drop them in. But before the first thing I should do is introduce ourselves, right? So I'll introduce myself in a second. But most importantly, I am here with Jeppe, who is, you work for, I'm going to try and get this right, the National Research Centre for the Working Environment in Copenhagen, right?
Yes,
Do you
I
want to
do.
introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Matt, and thank you for inviting me. My name is Jeppe Eislev, and I'm a senior researcher at the National Research Center for the Working Environment, where I work in a group called the Group for Safety Culture and Occupational Accidents, mainly, but with a lot of crossover to the psychosocial health and safety work. And yeah, well, I've been doing health and safety research for the last almost 15 years, and been here at the National Research Center for the most part of it since 2015. And yeah, and I'm you could say a work sociologist of background, but I've done a lot of work in both construction, health and safety, psychiatry, um, and different industries. We're doing some warehouse work at the moment, and so on and so forth. So yeah,
Nice one.
been
Nice
around.
one. Yeah, and I really, really appreciate you joining me. So, where this comes from, for those people who don't know who are tuning in. So, for those who don't know me, my name's Matt. I am a business psychologist, and I'm the founder of the Working Well community. Which, by the way, quick plug, you can join by pressing the QR code in the top left-hand corner. But I posted on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago now, wasn't it? A couple of weeks ago, I spotted a paper that had come out of the organization that Jeppe works for, around the psychological hierarchy of controls model that you've created. So I posted about that model, and it absolutely blew up. we got about 15,000 impressions and all these comments and all the rest of it. People found it really interesting. They had some questions about it as well, some of which I've got noted down, which I can ask you today in person. So after that, I thought there's obviously an interest there, which is great for me to see, by the way, because I am a big fan of the overlap between the world of kind of health and safety and psychological well-being, which we can get into.
Yeah.
So I reached out to you and said, would you be willing to talk to me a little bit more about the model, where it came from, walk us through it a little bit more and answer some of these questions? And you said yes, which was very nice of you. Yeah. So should we talk about the model and where's best to start? Where did the idea come from? And
Oh yeah, well that is a good question, and also a long story. And I'd say thank you for reaching out about this. And it has been so nice that so many people have been relating to this work also, because, and we're a group who made this. Asta, obviously, who were the main author of the article, and we sort of conceptualized it over the time, and we have had really, really great support from the rest of the team, Julie, Emily, and Michaela. So it's a group effort, really, and I'm just here discussing it, but it's been a thought in that has been cooking for quite some time. Back in 2018 or so, I was working on some with some other colleagues on health and safety coordinators in construction work, and we saw that we did a large ethnographic study where we shadowed 12 of these coordinators across all their work for more than 10 days.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw there was that they were, a lot of the time they had a really, really hard time of gaining impact in the organization and actually doing something, implementing measures that would make a difference for health and safety in general. And mainly there we were focused on ergonomics and risk of accident risks. But they had this hard time, and I was quite puzzled that they spend most of their time having meetings and making daily, walks around the site, and that was mainly what they did. Yeah. So in order to, analyze that, we needed a model for understanding what is effective safety measures. And back then, I came across the original hierarchy of controls, which many people know, but also I found that a lot of people in health and safety in general, occupational health and safety professionals and researchers, were not really aware of it at that point. And so we started analyzing the measures that health and safety coordinators implemented based on the original hierarchy of controls, and it turned out that mainly they would implement level 2 administrative controls. And so that has been a focus for me and the research group over the last years. And then we had to do this evaluation of this, what we call the ATP. It's about the health and the working authorities here in Denmark. We evaluate a more dialogue-based practice that they do on sites where they get out in all types of work. And that is about instead of just giving out fines and notices, instead of doing that, if a company agrees that they can see and perceive that we might have a problem with this well-being or health and safety issue, they can agree and get some help and counseling by the working authorities and thereby work towards improving this health and safety issue.
I got you.
So we evaluated that, and during this evaluation, we found that, okay, it would be nice to see if when the companies agree to solve these problems, are they actually implementing some good and effective measures as well, because that would be a good way of knowing if this inspection practice is good, it is effective, right? And so we started using the original hierarchy of controls for that. And we got into some quite tense discussions with the working authorities who said, hey, this cannot be applied to psychosocial health and safety issues. So you can't use it for that. And we were like, can that be true? And so on and so forth. So, but we were quite insisting. And so we went back to the literature, of course, and looked out for what is in this area. And we found the total worker health from US and Canada framework, and we looked into that. And okay, so there was a framework for which it would include psychosocial issues and ergonomic issues at least. So, but we weren't quite satisfied mainly because of this discrepancy with in that framework. Strategies, guidelines, and policies are quite high in the hierarchy as very effective measures. And what we've seen in at least in the coordinator study back in the days was that, and we know that from health and safety professionals literature, that our sort of work has turned more into these social and administrative practices that may not actually change health and safety of workers. So and well-being, of course, included in that terminology. So we were not quite satisfied with it, and we wanted so in order to investigate this more, we went into the literature and simply started looking into what's the evidence base of different types of interventions, and then we used that to cross to cross these two ways of thinking, the original hierarchy of controls and the existing literature on interventions.
I'm a massive fan of it. I'm not the only one, by the way. We've got a comment from Shell, all the way from New Zealand, by the way. Shell, thank you for joining. It's way past midnight in New Zealand, so staying up just to watch it live. But that was for your original paper, and I'm guessing the one that you've just done. But yeah, absolutely. I'm a huge fan and believer in this overlap between the world of health and safety and some of the methodologies associated with that, and using them with psychological well-being. I don't know why. I feel like maybe because I feel like they could be useful. Perhaps it legitimizes it in some way, because well-being, as you well know, does suffer from a little bit of a image crisis. It's a bit soft and fluffy. Whereas if you're talking about hierarchy of controls and actual things that an organization can do, perhaps they'll take it a little more seriously. But I feel like it's an interesting trend that I'm spotting. This move towards that sort of world.
Yeah, I think I think actually some of the crisis points that are in could be in psychosocial health and well-being are actually also present in the prevention of accidents.
Absolutely.
But I mean, there is definitely what we can see also in this study with our evaluation. We can see that the reason why they try to introduce this more practice dialogue based practice inspection practice is also that the authorities have a very hard time uncovering and to a juridical from a legal standpoint determining that there is a psychosocial health issue. So that's where this agreement-based and dialogue-based practice helps the authorities also address this. But I mean, what we see also in accident prevention out in the companies, a lot of times they will also implement sort of what you call fluffy measures and good agreements. We can, okay, let's do this and think a bit better about what we do and don't make mistakes, and let's not do that. And that's sort of the same thing when companies agree that we should have good values here and recognize each other in a positive way, and we don't use foul language and stuff. So that those are nice, declarations of attention. We want to do this or something, but there needs to be more, hands-on action. That's sort of what it says, right?
I agree. So, look, I'd love to hear a little bit more, because for those who've not seen, I'm sure most people logging in have seen your paper perhaps, but let me just flash it up. So this is the model that you kind of landed on. And obviously there's a huge amount of information within the paper itself. It's really, the thing that struck me was just how practical it is. I really loved you put together not only this model here, but you put together a table of specific interventions that an organization could consider based on 9 case studies, right, of organizations that you spoke to. And that's often missing from a lot of the kind of academic literature that I see. You get this is interesting and it makes sense theoretically to me, but what do I actually do? Whereas what really stood out to me from your paper was there were some concrete suggestions, and you don't for one second say that those suggestions are exhaustive and that this is all you can do, but it's a really great place to start. But do you want to just quickly take the audience through the model itself and what's
we can do. We definitely we can do that. So at the top, the sort of the best type of interventions you could do according to our model here is it's in both the original hierarchy controls and in the new revised one for psychosocial hierarchy here is eliminate working conditions that threaten health and safety. So it's short here in the visualization, but threaten health, safety, and well-being. So that means that if you can take the activity, basically you can take the human activity out of the work task that is unhealthy or threatens well-being, then you are not exposing anyone to this harm. In practice, that is often very hard to do. What we put up there in the psychosocial hierarchy of controls is interventions that reduce workload because or increase available time or physical resources. It could be introducing more workers to a task. It could be increasing the time your team has to complete the task and so on. So those are quite concrete and also, of course, often hard to implement if you're in different circumstances. But the thing is that they are very effective. And we see good evidence from existing studies that if you manage to do this, you can actually quite often improve the well-being. So did you want to say anything, Matt?
No, I was just going to say, and I guess organizations don't do that because it's seemingly expensive. I saw fair amount of the ways of reducing demands in your paper were hire more staff, right? Hire more people,
on this level,
which makes perfect sense. But you feel like an organization might think to themselves, well, I'm not going to do that, perhaps because it will take time, perhaps it will cost money. But as you said, most effective intervention. And actually, if you're only playing, and I'm sure you'll get onto this, but if you're only playing at the levels at the bottom there, you'll lose people anyway. So
Yeah.
you'll have to hire people anyway. So it's almost just trying to be more preventative and proactive with that, right?
Yeah, and that it is a great point you're making there, and you know the cost of, for instance, hiring new people because you lose some of the most effective and best workers you have is another facet of this, and which should be looked more into, definitely as time goes. So that is of course some important issues.
Yeah.
If we go to the fourth level, the next one from the top, we have like substitute safer and healthier work processes and practices, and that is what we see there is sort of the next level of evidence and interventions. We see that implementing different types of measures where workers increase their influence, in particularly on working time arrangements and changing working time arrangements for to better suit workers, could also be about introducing job rotation, where, for instance, let us say in elderly care or in psychiatric work or in educational work, where some of the stress or pressure is on some type of interaction with citizens or patients or if you can rotate work so that the same worker is not, and the same employee is not exposed to the same risks all the time, sort of, if you can see this picture. So that way you don't get exposed just as much as you otherwise would. And I think there's a very important thing to state about the working time arrangement thing that we see is effective in some of the good studies that have been made in this area, is that also we know that, for instance, work-life balance, with some of my good colleagues here from the economical health and safety department, they just did a study, and they showed that between 15 and 25% of all costs, because they focus on costs. So all costs related to health and safety in terms of ergonomic stress, anxiety, and depression could be reduced by improving work-life balance. It makes so good sense, right? When you think about that, for working families with kids and stuff, it's a really tough issue. So
Absolutely. We've got a question. I just thought I'd flash this one up from Anne. Thank you, Anne. He talks about this idea in England. Certainly, is it not the healthcare system's responsibility to react when people are experiencing psychosocial impact? I've got some thoughts on that. Well, my take on it is that it's always a mixed responsibility, to be perfectly honest. So I agree absolutely. The healthcare system is set up to do exactly that. It's to help people who are in who are in need of the help, and part of what caused them to need the help in the first place might be that psychosocial impact. I totally get that, and also, especially nowadays with people working from home and whatnot since COVID, the blurred lines between home and work, perhaps makes that responsibility even more so. However, I think that there are all sorts of other people who could take responsibility. So we'll get onto this, right? But the individual themselves has a certain level of responsibility to maintain their own well-being and look at psychosocial impact. I personally think the employer has a huge responsibility as well. You could even think about managers. I know it's always managers' fault, but you think about what actually impacts somebody's day-to-day well-being and psychosocial risk. A lot of the time, it is your line manager. So, what responsibility are they taking? So, my take on it would be that it's not a yes or a no. It's that we need to have a systemic approach to this across all these different levels, which is kind of mirrored in the model that you're looking at here.
Yeah, it is. I agree on that, and I mean, of course, it is the healthcare system's responsibility to react, but then the damage is sort of done, right? And we have, I mean, at least in Denmark, I'm not sure. I think we have a sort of a Western world pandemic on stress, right? So people are feeling more and more stressed. At least in Denmark, I know this is true, and As you say, Matt, that's of course it's something with people working to control their lives and trying to prepare themselves for work and everyday life. But it's also very much about working places, making sure that that the options are there to take care of yourself and make sure that you have a stress-free environment that you can, so you're ready to produce and have some a good culture at work. So yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Can I again ask a quick question about the application of psychosocial, or sorry, health and safety methodology to the world of well-being?
Yeah.
So, what role do you think that individual difference plays here? Because that's where I feel that. So, I'm a big fan of applying that methodology in that way, but I feel the one area that I find hard to get my head around is, let me give you a concrete example. If 100 people fall off a ladder, 100 people get hurt, right? So it's quite clear. Therefore, we need to make that ladder safer so that people don't fall off and get
Yeah.
hurt. So the control measure is it's not simple, but it's, you can draw a straight line between the two. When we're talking about psychosocial risk, however, two
Mm.
different people could work a 16-hour day. One would be absolutely fine. Maybe they would really like it because they love their job, whereas somebody else could be incredibly stressed by that 16-hour day and it would have an exhaustive effect on them. So
Yeah.
when you start to apply control measures across an organizational level, how do you account for those individual differences? That's a tough question for you.
Yeah, it is really tough, and it's something that both researchers and authorities around the world work with, right? So it is very difficult. But I will say something that is just equally confusing or something like that. I mean, the dude who the 100 dudes who fall off the ladder. Um, why? I mean, the accident is when they fall off the ladder. It's not necessary. They could have not been on the ladder, sort of.
Mm.
And who are the types of people who get up on the ladder and fall down, and make the decision to stand on the ladder in the wrong way on slippery ground or whatever it is.
Yeah.
And what work culture are they in? But I mean, so it's really, really difficult, the question you ask, and I think there could be good reason to look more into it. But I think we are also in a situation where that links into broader societal questions of acceleration. If you ask some of you ask Hartmut Rosa from Germany and from the Frankfurt School, and you see all sorts of some issues on the societal level. On this, we have a lot of pressure in organizations today, but also we have a lot of increasing differences between people who prioritize their own health and safety and participate in health initiatives at the workplace, or work to improve their own health and safety outside of work. So it's very difficult, I think, and that's why also I think this dialogue-based practice that, for instance, the authorities wants to apply is quite positive. But I mean, we can definitely see from different types of studies that there are some exposures that are unhealthy for workers, right? So that there are risk factors related to accelerating work, too high demands, sexual harassment, and bullying, lack of control at work, and so on and so forth. And I think while the individual, of course, plays a role in this is not, there are no simple solutions to this. But I think if you see and you feel that the workplace is suffering from these issues, you should start to take care of it. And you can, because people are going to get stressed and going to lose interest in your working place if you have like bad working conditions. So
Yeah. Absolutely. I really love that answer about if I'm understanding that correctly, you're basically saying the first part of that is that your physical and your psychological health and lives are inextricably linked, right? You know,
Yeah.
and you can't remove physical safety from psychological well-being and what's going on inside somebody's brain. So it's
Yeah.
not too big a jump to get to this, and where we're talking about just psychosocial risk.
No, and we're not. I will just say we're not gonna find, the definite final answer to this either. So like, there's not gonna be one truth, because this is also a matter with human, society and nature, that as soon as we define one truth, almost, we're gonna move on to something else, right? And dynamics of power are gonna change, and politics are gonna play into this also. So yeah, it's quite difficult, but it's also important to address right now, because so many people are actually putting into words that they're suffering from health and well-being issues.
Absolutely. So you're telling me AI is not just going to fix all this? That's disappointing.
It's going to be really interesting. I mean,
Yeah.
some of the tasks that we don't want to spend time with. For instance, as a researcher, when we make a lot of interviews, we sit and transcribe those interviews right in hand, and we can get that done by AI now, and that's really nice. We're looking into that in some research projects as well. Actually, we're hoping to do over the coming time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Although double-edged sword, right? Because AI and the displacement of jobs and all the rest of it could be a psychosocial risk in itself.
Yes,
It alleviates some psychosocial risks and it adds to others. So it'll be. I think I'm slightly tongue-in-cheek there, but I'm backing up what you're saying. This constantly changes, and you're never going to get. This is the solution, right? My take on it, for what it's worth, is I am also a big advocate of this idea of participative design and human-centered design, and that actually, if an organization wants to take this sort of thing seriously, they should be co-creating these things with their employees. It is not the remit of the executive team to sit in a dark room and work out how to eliminate all the potential harm and and encourage personal change. Ask people, listen to them, talk to them. Right?
And act on it, right? So that's actually what we're saying with the hierarchy of controls as well. Is like, we know that the influence, the control, the participative aspects of organizational development and so on, they are so important. They motivate workers. They affect their health and safety directly. They increase trust and loyalty in the organization. So those are very important, both for work well-being and for the organization. But then also with this, don't let it stay on, like we've seen in some studies over the recent years here, which I've also participated in, that participation programs becomes like, okay, we're gonna tell our employees what we're gonna do, and then they can comment, and that's it. No, as you say, co-creation. We're even discussing in some studies, more democratic thinking types of management practices. We have some interesting cases from Copenhagen area as well in that regard. So there are so much to gain from that.
Yeah, absolutely. So just before I flick back off the model, I did have a final question, because you kind of got to level 2, and then we can read the level the other 3 levels. So then we've got work redesign, we've got administrative control. So that's what the question was about before we finally get to that encouraging personal change, which is often what organizations focus on. Do this resilience training and that'll sort you out, right? Whereas actually you're suggesting you want to do some of the other levels. One of the questions that we got on my original post, actually, when I've put this out there, was somebody challenging the idea that policy would sit at the administrative controls level. They were suggesting that, or essentially asking the question, if you've got a really strong policy around certain aspects related to psychosocial risk, and crucially, you communicate it really effectively, could that not move up the hierarchy?
Potentially, I wouldn't be in disagreement with if we see the evidence that would be the case, then of course that we should have more research addressing that. But what we would suggest, and what the literature as we speak shows, is that type of policies and visions for the organization, they're usually not implemented in concrete ways, in which leads to these higher level of effectiveness. But I mean, still, if these, and what we do also in our analysis is, if a company uses a policy, and they as a based on this policy implements concrete, participative practices and so on, we would score that as two different measures. So maybe a policy, and you could say all other communicative practices could be the predecessor for implementing higher levels of practice. So we wouldn't say that administrative controls in this sense are not worthy of being looked at and used. They can be the predecessor of higher level practices, and which is really important. But in their own right, they just might not cut it to improve well-being and psychosocial health.
Got you. And I feel like that about all 5 of the levels, to be perfectly honest. You could look at this and come to the conclusion that encouraging personal change isn't important, that we should just be focusing our time and attention on the top 2 levels. But I think from reading the content of the article, the article that you wrote, you're not suggesting that. You're suggesting that you can make improvements at all 5 of these levels, right?
Yeah, we are. That is a main point, and actually what we've also discussed, and we actually had the opportunity to discuss this with a group of researchers who wrote a letter to the editor of the journal, which we published in, and it's really important also that's why if you see the original hierarchy of controls, you don't have this line where we say implement comprehensive, multifaceted, and context-specific measures. That's really important, and we see that the most effective in at least in the world of safety and accident prevention, implementing multifaceted measures and comprehensive measures. We use that interchangeably. That is very important, and that is oftentimes the most effective thing to do things at more different levels. But as you move down the ladder of the psychosocial hierarchy of controls, you have a tendency to see that we will expect that you have a tendency to see that these measures become less effective. So no, they all qualify, but we would encourage professionals, researchers, and so on to look upwards to try and implement something higher in the hierarchy, and at least have that as a frame of mind. If that's not possible in contextual situation, doing these things are still definitely valuable.
I think that's why one of the things I really liked about this. There was a study. The names of the authors and the exact study are going to slip my mind right now, but it created quite a lot of traction towards the end of last year, and it was where they'd looked at essentially the individual well-being interventions don't work. So they had all this data that showed that they don't work, and the kind of the knee-jerk reaction to that was, well, let's stop doing them then. Let's stop all these individual well-being solutions. And I looked at that and I thought, yes, I looked at it differently. I thought there's 2 things here. Number one, we need to get more preventative, as and talk about some of the higher levels of the things that you've talked about there. And number 2, we need to make the individual interventions better and informed by some of the higher levels in the research and the conversations that organizations have had, right?
Yeah. But I mean,
don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, as they would say in Britain.
yeah, definitely. But also, what we see in the evidence is actually that individual interventions tend to work quite well.
Right.
They work quite well in the sense that, for instance, mindfulness, individual therapy. That's the whole psychological, industry. People going to individual therapy, it would be strange if it didn't work in some way. And it seems to actually do in the studies that exist. I was looking into, was there any more? Those were the main things there. Stress coping also, and developing of mental skills. Those are interventions that have shown actually quite high levels of evidence. But the issue there is, as we see it and as we describe in the paper, is that they're also the type of interventions that companies are most likely to participate in, because they put, you know, the responsibility for change on the worker instead of the organization. So it's just easier to complete for us researchers. It's much easier to have to gain cases and to gain access to the organizations, which is obviously sad, because we would like to make some more organizational interventions.
Yeah.
And also then a point is there that they just put the, you know, the responsibility on the worker, as we've discussed a bit before. But the issue with that is that we know that if you do that, you risk workers competing at an even higher level and you know, not all jobs are meant to be elite jobs, and not all workers are meant to be elite footballers or, you know, actors or so on. And in that leads to an acceleration of demands and time issues and so on. And of course, that's going to put a lot of stress on employees. So therefore, we have to like put a parenthesis, I think, around the individual level measures, and say they're good, and we should all take care of our mental and physical health. Of course, that's good for everybody.
Yeah, yeah. And thank you, Ben. Absolutely. Fleming at the Oxford Wellbeing Research. That was that paper that I was referencing earlier. I've got just a couple more, one really geeky question just before we finish up. And by the way, if there's any other questions, just quickly in the chat before we finish up, maybe another 5-6 minutes, let us know. So obviously the approach that you've taken is more qualitative in style rather than quantitative. Do you have any plans? Do you think there would be value in trying to collect quantitative style data to validate the model that you've created?
There would be definitely. I think so. I think it would be, it's so awesome to in both the area of you know, safety and in psychosocial health and well-being, in ergonomics, in all areas. I think there would be a lot of value in trying to use these frameworks to really become more aware of what is quality in interventions, and what is quality and effective measures. And we could use that for both working authorities, and we could use that as professionals and as researchers in the area. And definitely, I mean, you should always care about, you know, what types of metrics you start using and so on. And there should be a lot of discussion and validation of that, but definitely I would think that would be really interesting to start doing that, and I hope to see that in the coming years. Actually, I hope we get the chance to engage with that, definitely.
Yeah. So. Yeah, the thing that really interests me as well is that coupled with the move towards more objective measures of psychological health and well-being and risk, you know. So you think about your wearables, you think about your AI tracking language within emails and text messages across an organization. Like, maybe I'm going a bit too far, but I feel like I don't want to turn into Big Brother. But I do feel like perhaps in the future that might be where this space goes, you know, because as I started off, as we started the conversation by saying, you don't want people to think that this work that we're involved with is all about just wellness and, you know, just let's try and it morally comes from the right place, but without the firm evidence, objective or subjective, to back it up, the risk is that it never really gets that legitimacy that we want it to have. I don't know. Yeah. Maybe I'll go too far. Want AI tracking all of our emails. What are the questions? Oh yeah, I was going to ask you. What's your, kind of on a similar theme? What's your view for how you'd like organizations to use this? So if an organization company in Denmark or in England saw this paper, what do you want them to do?
Yeah, I'd like them to, when they next time they think about doing an initiative concerning psychosocial well-being and health, I'd like them to just take this into account when they do their planning and their scheduling of what are we going to do, and hopefully they'll also include their employees and their health and safety representatives and so on in planning this, and use this when they come up with some ideas. Just say, hey, can we push this up the ladder of the psychosocial hierarchy, and maybe get it more effective and stuff. And I will say one thing, Matt, in relation to, and that's a completely different topic, of course, but in relation to what you said before, we published last year also a framework for making ethical considerations in relating health and safety to new technologies at work. Okay. So we're really moving in that area as well, and I can perhaps link that to you. So that's really important as well. The way we're moving there.
Yeah, absolutely. I've dubbed 2025 the year of the wellbeing leader, right? And the reason I've said that is because I've got high hopes for the way that the wellbeing industry is moving and can move over the next 12 months and longer. You know, I'm with you. All the statistics show people are getting more stressed, and it can be easy sometimes to get quite down about everything. You know, that we're not making any progress. But I just think we're maybe not measuring things in the right way, and we're maybe not approaching well-being in the way that we should. And maybe almost we need this dip to then come to that realization, start to adopt some perhaps more concrete methodologies like the ones that you're suggesting, and others, I'm sure. And then that will really have the impact that we want it to have, I hope.
Yeah, it could be. And there are there are big things at work, right? So technology threatening, you know, the way people think, and increasing pace in everyday life, and we have the sustainability questions, and also, of course, socioeconomic changes in the world around us. So there are many things that contribute to these issues, right? And work both at personal and workplace level. So there are many things impacting this.
Absolutely. Although that does remind me of one final comment / question I'll sneak in just before we finish. I saw in the line, so you've got a section obviously on potential limitations of your approach. And one of them is that you're saying perhaps this is oversimplifying complex problems. When I read that, I thought, yes, but then I also thought it needs simplifying even more. You know, because even the language and the terminology that you use within the psychosocial, ask 100 people who don't work in this field what a psychosocial risk is, probably won't even be able to answer that question. So there's a piece here around communication and how we
definitely
how we simplify it even further and bring it to the masses, right?
Yeah, definitely. And that's why it also made me so happy to see that you guys engage so much with it, because it's actually a really, really large discussion, both in the research area that we do and in the institution, and what I've been doing for 10 years, trying to, also build this bridge between the research that we do and people who actually need to use it. So I was so glad that you guys took it up and you wanted to discuss this. So that's at least a move in the right direction. But I can tell you that we have discussions in-house that, is this oversimplifying content? Is this oversimplifying the way that this works? And the discussion we've had today is also more nuanced than almost is written in the paper, right? But I mean, if, as you say, I'm definitely agreeing. When we're going out to talk to organizations, to companies, to public, organizations, they need something that they can use quite simply, and that can't be too much this and that, and on one side and on the other side and stuff. So definitely.
I got you. Stuart's put a question in the chat. He's left it too late. We've only got 30 seconds to go. Maybe you'll have to answer this question for Stuart offline, perhaps, unless you've got a 30-second answer to it.
I mean, you could probably do a study if you made what we call a meta review, where you could actually see how much if you took all these studies that exist out there and only find the ones that have effect measurements, you could be able to see if there is the various reduction of different levels of the hierarchy of controls. I think that would be possible. I would say there would always be this bias that there are so many more individual type studies, so that's a risk there. For bias, but I think you could actually do it, and I think it would be great to use for future reference, that when you do interventions, you start seeing what are we implementing here and where is it on the hierarchy of controls, so that you have awareness about it and you see if there are differences in outcomes on it. That would be really interesting.
Amazing. Perfect answer, and great place to finish. And thank you, Stuart. And Stuart gives me a nice segue as well into Stuart is one of our members of the Working Well community. So, the Working Well community exists to have these sorts of conversations that we've had today. So thank you so much for your time today, Jeppe. But if anyone wants to, look out for other conversations like this, I mean, you can follow me on LinkedIn. It's always a good thing to do. But also join the Working Well community. It's completely free. It's for anyone really who's interested in well-being or has a responsibility for well-being within an organization. We would love to see you there as well. But thank you so much for your time today, Jeppe. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you.
I didn't even get to ask you I didn't even get to tell you how much I love Copenhagen. We'll have to talk about that next time around. Yeah, I'll have to do it in person next time.
Yeah, nice. Let's do that.
Cool.
Bye.
Right. See you soon.